All right, let's get cooking. Welcome to the latest edition of Chin Check Sports Radio. I'm your host, JD. I want to thank you all for taking the time out to listen to our program. And as always, we accept any suggestions, comments, criticism, and feedback, which improves the quality of our program, which ultimately improves your listening experience. Week 5, Dallas Cowboys. Let's jump right into it. The Dallas Cowboys lost 34-24 to the visiting Green Bay Packers. So that means the Dallas Cowboys were at home in Jerry's world. And let's just say that that score is not very indicative of the play on the field. I thought I would be a little bit more upset in producing this broadcast, but being that the team mustered up a furious attempt at a comeback in the fourth quarter, for they did give a spirited effort. However, and let me say this very clearly, that effort in the fourth quarter does not in any way, shape, or form mitigate, minimize, rationalize, excuse, justify the listless effort and performance in the first 3 quarters of the football game. I said this after the Miami Dolphins game, that you cannot sleepwalk through the first half against a quality team and then expect to turn off the switch in the second half, because unfortunately the Dallas Cowboys dug themselves in too deep of a hole that they could not climb out of. Now in this game, there is plenty of blame to go around, and we're going to give everybody the equal dose of blame pie, blame stew, blame pizza. Everything is that everybody's going to get their fair share of criticism. Well, let's start from the top. Quarterback Dak Prescott. 27 of 44 pass attempts, 403 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Now, let's just say this. Now, you're going to have some sportscasters on tomorrow's show, namely Skip Bayless, who's going to scream and harp on the fact that Dak Prescott had a high QBR. Again, QBR means nothing to what I saw on the field. Quarterback Dak Prescott's first interception was during the Cowboys' first offensive series. They were driving the ball down the field, throws a pass, bounced off the hands of the receiver, and it resulted in an interception. Now, I know people will say that if the ball hits the receiver in his hands, the receiver should automatically catch it, and I really don't subscribe to that theory, because I do believe when you're running at top speed, trying to catch something that's behind you is rather hard to do, and I feel that that pass was a bad pass off that Prescott, and actually it was off the hands of Amari Cooper. We're going to get to him in a little bit because he is our Chin Check Radio Player of the Week. And to me, I felt that was a bad pass by Dak Prescott. It results in the first interception. Then Dak again threw another interception in the same first quarter. And in the fourth quarter, while trying to launch a comeback, he threw another interception. So 3 interceptions. I believe his second or third time throwing 3 interceptions in one game. I'm just saying I believe in paying the athletes their money, but just playing devil's advocate here. If I was in the negotiating table or room or conference room with Dak Prescott and he's asking for top quarterback money, I would play him a copy or some series of this game. The Dallas Cowboys were shut out 17-0 in the first quarter. In the third quarter, they were still, down 31-3 and did not score their first offensive touchdown until almost the end of the third quarter. So we talked about Dak Prescott. Let's go to Ezekiel Elliott. I got 12 carries, 62 yards, and 1 touchdown. I'm glad he got his money, but some of the production, not really looking at that. And to be honest with you, those 62 yards, a little bit padded, because at the end of the first half, when the Cowboys were down and were trying to run out the clock, that gave Zeke some extra carries and hence gave him some extra yards. However, I will give a slight pass to Zeke on this one because of the fact that they were behind, which means that now your quarterback has to throw the football versus running the football that you would if you had a lead or in a close game. So I'm going to let Zeke off the hook just a little bit. I do have a problem with the offensive coordinator, because why are you coming out slinging the ball in the first quarter where clearly the Green Bay Packers, their Achilles heel, their weakness on defense is actually run defense, and yet you still want to come on out and make the point to prove that Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback and he should be paid that kind of money, when in fact he should have been running the football, wearing down the Green Bay Packers. But no, he wants to force the football, and you have interceptions, which results in the Green Bay Packers scoring on those interceptions, and yet you find yourself behind 31-3 at home against the Green Bay Packers team who is without their starting and top wide receiver, Davante Adams. So just something just keep in mind here. Wide receiver Amari Cooper, 11 catches, 226 yards, and 1 touchdown. The big play came in the fourth quarter where he shook a defender and he took it to the house. So solid A by Amari Cooper. Again, I'm going to talking to some friends of mine, they feel that the interception was part his fault in the first quarter and part Dak's fault. I'm going to put all of it on Dak because if the ball was behind him, the ball was in front of Amari Cooper rather, I think that catch would have been made. Now, defensively, they're going to get some of the blame too. So we have served Dak Prescott his serving of false pie. Now it's time to look at the defense. Now, the Dallas Cowboys defense, they are supposed to have a young pass rushing stud, 2 stud linebackers, a decent secondary, and they could not stop the Green Bay Packers really until the end of the game, until the fourth quarter, for allowing 152 yards in the fourth quarter in the first quarter as a defense. However, I will give them a slight pass because, again, those turnovers resulted in bad field position. Of course, you cannot turn the ball over. So, defensively, they only got 2 sacks today. Yes, 2 sacks. 1 from Dorrance Armstrong and 1 from Jalen Smith. That was not until the fourth quarter. So, your defensive line, Harley, not too much pressure. Yes, we know Aaron Rodgers is a mobile quarterback. This is why you pay a DeMarcus Tank Lawrence, who for everything that occurred this summer gave me 1 tackle. Yes, I'll say it again. DeMarcus Lawrence, 1 tackle, no sacks. Leighton Vander Esch, he's going to get some of this blame too. Leighton Vander Esch, talented linebacker, but I saw so many missed tackles from Leighton Vander Esch on today's game. It just boggled the mind. This is what happens when you start doing commercials and you forget your bread and butter. I don't know what happened, but he was being beat on a lot of plays, taking bad angles, whiffing badly on tackles. So this great linebacking core that the Dallas Cowboys have, I really didn't see it because running back Aaron Jones was looking like Emmitt Smith used to look like in the old Texas Stadium back in the 90s, scoring 4 touchdowns. Those 4 touchdowns, the first time the Dallas Cowboys have allowed 4 touchdowns to the same running back. It has only happened 3 other times where they've allowed 3 touchdowns to the same runner, and was even sad and probably that the image that I think really crystallized the game today was the image of Aaron Jones as he's running into the end zone on his 3rd touchdown run, waving bye-bye in the face of cornerback Byron Jones. So definitely a sad sight to see. But again, Leighton Vander Esch did not have one of his best games today. Brett Maher, the kicker, missed a field goal, a 54-yarder at the end of the first half. Okay, some can make it a 54-yarder, even though they might say it's too long of a distance, but that should be his range. And by the way, you're indoors and no elements are affecting you. So that's something to think. If they happen to go outside to play in the playoffs on cold weather, would that be a problem? And then as a team makes their comeback. Now, the goal was if they were to make a field goal to bring the game closer to 34-27, they can attempt the onside kick, hopefully get the ball back. He makes the 28-yarder, then backup guard, and I can't pronounce his name, he gets a false start penalty. Moves the ball back 5 yards, so it becomes a 33-yard field goal, and then he misses that kick, which all but ended the Dallas Cowboys' push for a comeback. So it definitely was not a great day today. Those 3 interceptions by Dak Prescott actually could have been even worse because, the turnover battle could have been even worse, and here's why. In that same fourth quarter, while the Cowboys were driving, there was a fumble. Luckily, it was a false start because backup tackle Cameron Fleming, and I'm going to get on him in a second, and left guard Connor Williams both had a false start penalty, but luckily when Travis Frederick snapped the football, the ball bounced off of the guy going in motion. I forget which player it was. Green Bay recovered, but luckily it was ruled a false start. Then Dak Prescott, think the play afterwards, throws an interception in the end zone, and luckily that was negated by 2 Green Bay penalties. So it actually could have been worse. Now, on last week's broadcast, I know I mentioned that when Tyron Smith doesn't play, recent history has shown us that the team does not play well at all, especially on the offensive line. And you saw it again today, where Cameron Fleming was getting his lunch eaten repeatedly by one of the Smith guys. And I believe that was Zadarius Smith, number 55. Was getting his lunch eaten all day long. So definitely was not a good look. I saw it coming. But there was a little bit of a bright spot that followed by a bad spot. Other right tackle Lyle Collins, who battled injuries this whole week, was not supposed to play, but ended up, gutting it out to play. He gets injured, walks back to the locker room. Then they put in an undrafted free agent, Brandon Knight, to replace Lyle Collins. So now you have a Dallas Cowboys team that is without their starting left tackle, possible Hall of Famer Tyron Smith, right tackle Lyle Collins, who's actually been probably their best offensive lineman this year, are both out. But I will give Brandon Knight credit. I thought he played very well. Considering the limited action that he had, and I thought he played well. I thought he held up, pretty well. So that's something that I hope that he can continue to draw upon. Now, for the play of the game, did not happen on the field of play. The play of the game happened actually on the sidelines. Coach Jason Garrett gets penalized, an unsportsmanlike penalty, for slamming and throwing, adamantly throwing down a challenge flag. Why? Because there was a play in which Amari Cooper caught the football. The referees ruled it an incomplete pass. And Jason Garrett, in his frustration, takes the flag, looks at the official, throws the flag down in front of the official, and that official then throws a yellow penalty flag. Now, that stemmed from a couple of plays earlier, where Jason Garrett and that same referee, where there was a disagreement over pass interference call by Anthony Brown. When Anthony Brown was trying to guard the Green Bay Packers wide receiver, didn't turn around and look for the ball. However, the ball did hit him in the back. So the official said something to the effect of he's not one to argue the call, and that Anthony Brown, he didn't make a play for the ball, and then he told Jason Garrett to throw the flag. So that right there, I thought set the tone for the relationship between Jason Garrett and the officials. And when that play with Amari Cooper, where he was ruled out of bounds on actual catch, Jason Garrett's frustration just came over and he slammed the red challenge flag down to the ground and received an unsportsmanlike penalty. Now, I will say this much. I think that's the most anger I've seen in the Jason Garrett era on the sidelines, as opposed to clapping all the damn time. I wish he would show that same anger and emotion towards his players who were not playing very well at all in the first 3 quarters. So he should have went out there in the locker room and cussing folks out and doing what you have to do to fire the team up. So you save that for on the field. So this could be, depending on how this season shakes out, the beginning of the end of the Jason Garrett era. So again, funny, the beginning of the end of the Jason Garrett era is when he decides to show some emotion on the field. So definitely a disappointing loss. I don't take any moral victory in this, saying that the Cowboys played well and they fought to the very end, and Dak Prescott never gave up. They should have never put themselves in that position in the first place. They are now 3-2. They have lost 2 straight games, and what's even worse looking into it, they're 0-2 against quality teams. So, and again, I don't buy into that. Well, you haven't played anybody. You play the teams in your schedule. Because I remember years ago when the Dallas Cowboys were ransacked with injuries, and the people, they beat the Cowboys, and they're responsible as well. You only play who you have to play, and you play who's on the field. So now don't say, well, the 3 victories doesn't count. No, you play who you have to play, and you play who's on the schedule. But you always want to have a good litmus test to see how you stack up against other quality teams in your division and or your conference. And it did not go well the last 2 days. the last 2 games, rather. You lost against a New Orleans team without Drew Brees, and you just lost again at home to the Green Bay Packers, who were without their starting wide receiver, Davante Adams. So definitely not a good win for the Cowboys. Not a good loss for the Cowboys. Definitely a disappointing Sunday. For now, they get ready to play the Jets, and it's the Jets. Then a week after that is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles, so that should be another game to see where the team stands. So I, for one, am not going to be giving out any moral victory award. And we fought well. No, you lost. You're supposed to beat the Packers. You were at home. They were without their starting receiver, and you're supposed to beat them. So they definitely need to go back to the drawing board and prepare for next week. In the world of professional boxing, we had a fight this weekend. Triple G, Gennady Golovkin versus Sergiy, the technician, Derevyanchenko. On paper, this fight shouldn't even be competitive, and the reason why: you have Triple G, 41 total fights, 39 wins, 35 knockouts, versus Derevyanchenko, who had 14 total fights, 13 wins, 10 KOs, and 2 losses. And that loss was a split decision loss against Daniel Jacobs, who Triple G had already beaten. So, and Triple G's famous fights is, again, the aforementioned win against Daniel Jacobs, a draw, then a loss versus Canelo Alvarez. So on paper, it was not even supposed to be a competitive fight. And obviously, Triple G got a whole lot more than what he bargained for and eked out a decision. In the first round, I thought the first round is kind of what put Triple G, put him in the hole, what put him above, rather, was scoring that knockdown in the first round. So, of course, you score the knockdown in the first round, that gives it a 10-8 round. So, at this point, Derevyanchenko is fighting he's fighting from the hole, but very competitive fight. Both landed and threw an equal amount of punches as well as power punches. There is some concern for Triple G. He does look a little bit older, slower, not fired off. I kind of felt he looked that way during the Canelo fight, especially the second fight. He's no longer being trained by the great Abel Sanchez, and I can kind of see why, because I like Abel Sanchez as a trainer, but I really didn't agree with the advice Abel Sanchez was giving Triple G in the corner versus Canelo Alvarez. So I want to see moving forward. I know I believe it was Eddie Hearn who stated that possibly that Triple G might have been ill, which might have explained why he didn't look that good. I think he's starting to get a little older, getting a little bit long in the tooth. So we'll see what the future holds. If Canelo gets past a Sergiy Kovalev on November the 2nd, then I guess we'll see if a rubber match can be made with the two. So I don't know where Triple G goes forward if he wants a big fight. Honestly, I think he needs to give this guy a rematch again if you really want to be honest about it. And it's another thing too, and I'll say this right now, it's still weird to me not watching fights on HBO. I know the world has changed. I know time has changed. It's just still weird having to watch fights on The Zone and ESPN Plus. It's just weird watching that and not watching fights on HBO, listening to the Jim Lampleys and the Larry Merchants and the Roy Jones and the Bernard Hopkins. So I'm giving these guys a chance. I know, you have to adjust to the new world, but it's just weird not watching these fights on HBO anymore. And lastly, in the UFC, we had a middleweight unification fight in Melbourne, Australia. Now, in boxing, the middleweight division is 160 pounds. In the UFC, the middleweight division is 185 pounds. So in Melbourne, Australia, there was a fight to unify the middleweight championship between Israel, the last style Vander Adesanya, versus Robert the Reaper Whittaker. Now, there's a little bit of I don't want to say a geography beef. I don't want to say where one is from, but Israel Adesanya, of Nigerian descent, I guess raised in New England, versus Robert Whittaker, who's from Australia but actually born in New Zealand. So it's kind of a bit of a homecoming for both. People wanted to question Robert Whittaker when I watched a countdown show. Does he consider himself New Zealand or Australian? And then Adesanya responded, well, he's not from New Zealand. He always claimed Australian. Hey, I don't know what the difference is, but that was kind of a little internal beef that they had. A little bit about Robert Whittaker. His resume is 24 total fights, 20 wins, 9 KOs, 5 submissions, 6 decisions with 4 losses. 1 by KO, 1 by submission, and 2 by decision. Now, his notable wins include 2 times over Yoel Romero. That first time was winning the championship, defeating Jiu-Jitsu Ace, probably one of the greatest Jiu-Jitsu practitioners of all time, Jacare Souza by TKO, then also defeated Derek Brunson by TKO, decisioned Uriah Hall from the Ultimate Fighter middleweights fame, and also TKO with a former training partner of mine named Clint Headbuster Hester. Versus Adesanya, whose big victories was against Kevin Gastelum in his last fight to win the interim middleweight championship. Defeated an older and faded the legendary Anderson Silva, TKO Derek Brunson. And in this fight, besides the ending of the fight, was the entrance of Israel Adesanya. I think probably one of the best ring entrances of all time. Maybe Rampage Jackson with a wolf howl and a chain around the neck, but definitely a ring entrance to remember for guys were dancing before he came out and he walked out of the long tunnel and joined them. So I thought definitely well choreographed ring entrance. As for the fight itself, really didn't last too long. For at the end of the first round, Adesanya scored with a right hook right to the chin that dropped Robert Whittaker. Luckily, the bell rang. In the second round, scored a KO victory, whereas another 1-2 combination dropped Robert Whittaker. Then he went for the finish, and the referee stopped the fight. So your new, undisputed middleweight champion of the world is Israel, the last style bender Adesanya, who promptly and quickly gave the middle finger to Brazilian model-looking Paulo Costa. So that should be the next fight. I'm definitely interested in seeing that fight as a UFC fan. Now, the fight that everybody's talking about, including Daniel Cormier, and by the way, it was good to hear Daniel Cormier and see from Daniel Cormier after his loss to Stipe Miocic, so definitely good seeing your champ. The fight that everybody is kind of talking about that's building and blossoming and that's starting to grow from a grassroots level is Adesanya versus legend, probably the greatest of all time, Johnny Bones Jones. Now, there's kind of been a Twitter exchange between the two. A lot of people felt that with Adesanya coming up in the UFC, he resembled the style of John Jones. And for some reason, Jones took exception to that. So there's kind of been a war of words back and forth between the two on Twitter and what Jones would do to Adesanya and what Adesanya would do to Jones. So, words are being exchanged. But now this fight has actually come a little bit closer to reality. And I don't know if and when it would happen, but it's an early analysis of a chin check analysis of that particular fight. If the middleweight champion and the UFC light heavyweight champion would ever meet for some type of super fight. Now, both stand 6 feet 4 inches tall. That's pretty amazing because John Jones, for one of the few times, maybe except Alexander Gustafsson, is fighting somebody who he can look eye to eye. However, Jones still has a reach of 84.5 inches versus only 80 inches for Adesanya. Now, naturally, Jones is the bigger fighter, having a 20-pound weight difference, fighting in the light heavyweight division, and I believe Jones does walk around probably at around 220, 230. So Jones is naturally the bigger guy. I think striking, I'm going to give the edge to Adesanya. His kickboxing background, I think he's a better striker. Like the way the guy moves, his defense, like the guy barely get hit. Now, if you take away the Gastelum fight where he was hit a little bit, he definitely moves and dodges and sidestep punches. He has great footwork. So I think he's a better pure striker than John Jones. John Jones clearly has an edge in grappling. Why is that? Because Jones's background is in grappling and Greco-Roman and throws. So I think the strikes would favor Adesanya on paper. Now, I don't think he'll embarrass Jones. I think Jones himself is an adequate striker. So even though I think Adesanya is the better striker, Jones is adequate enough as a striker. I think Jones is the better grappler than Adesanya, and I think by far, and again, Jones has the submissions to support that claim of being a better grappler, as well as his grappling experience, wrestling in college, and everything else. So definitely an interesting fight to if they do want to make that fight. If you're asking me now who I think would win, I would choose John Jones to win that fight. I would say third, fourth round knockout. Not saying bad about Adesanya, but I think Jones is physically the bigger guy. I think Jones would go in for the takedown. I think Jones would adjust to Adesanya's style, because I think Jones, besides Floyd Mayweather, I think is one of the smartest fighters who's ever lived, where he can take what you do best or knows how to implement his game plan and knows how to make adjustments during the fight. And I've watched that with Jones fights time and time again. He'll see what you do best, he'll make the adjustment, he'll fight his fight, and then make you look bad in the process. But Adesanya is a very exciting fight. I'm looking to see what he does in the middleweight division. And looking at his style and how he dedicates himself, I don't see anybody beating this guy for a while. Barring any injury or doing anything stupid outside of the octagon, he should be around a while. If Jones is around a while, and there's no other worthy challengers at 205, and not even counting Chris Weidman, if there's other worthy challengers at 205 pounds, I think that'll be something, if the money is right, to set that fight up between him and Israel Adesanya. So another good week at Chin Check Radio. This is Chin Check Radio signing off, and until the next time.